Bobby,
Yo.
Miss Babadook.
Mm-hmm.
I have I have a meme for you to look at.
All
I
right.
just want you to explain the meme
Mhm.
and what you're seeing in the image.
All right. Okay. So at the top it says, if this bird were covered in oil, then this picture would be posted everywhere. And unfortunately, it has a dead bird at the bottom. Looks like a bird of prey of some kind, a falcon or an eagle. I'm not sure exactly what, but it's very dead. And there's a lot of windmills in the background, which is too bad because I like those windmills. They're pretty cool.
Yeah.
You ever gone to one of those windmills and like stood at the bottom of them and looked up? And it's pretty cool. It's like a really big fan, I guess.
I don't think I've ever been like up close to one.
They're pretty cool. I recommend going and checking it out. Don't do anything stupid. Don't hurt the windmill, but they're interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've gone out there a couple times.
Yeah, I love the way they look. One time I was driving to Bloomington, and there it was like very foggy.
Oh yeah,
and this windmill, you could just see the bottom parts of the blades coming out of the fog.
Oh, that's kind of
yeah.
cool.
It looked really cool. It was like something from Silent Hill. It was amazing.
Oh yeah, I believe that. Yeah.
It was really cool looking.
That's interesting.
So let's break down this meme a little bit. The suggestion, obviously, is that wind turbines are dangerous to wildlife, and the media doesn't want to cover it. I am going to talk about the image first because we have seen in the past misleading uses of images, and I wanted to be sure. I just tracked this image down to a website called Windmills Kill. We'll kind of go over the article wherein this image was used.
All right. Windmills kill. Yeah, sure they do.
Yeah. Now, obviously, being called Windmills Kill, there's an agenda.
Oh, yeah, obviously.
But is there politically biased language on their website? Let's see. The Obama administration is issuing 30-year permits for, quote, taking, in parentheses, killing, bald and golden eagles. The great birds will be legally slaughtered, quote, unintentionally by lethal wind turbines installed in their breeding territories and in dispersion areas where their young congregate. By chance, if you believe in coincidences, a timely government study claims that wind farms, quote, only kill 1.4 million birds yearly by 2030. This new report is just one of many financed with taxpayer money aimed at convincing the public that additional mortality caused by wind plants is sustainable. It is not. It's a little biased sounding.
A little bit. Yep.
Just a little bit. But where did Windmills Kill get this image? So on their website, they did have a credit for the photo. So it comes courtesy of a site called Gorillur. I don't know exactly if I'm saying that right. It's Gurelur. I'll read from their about page to kind of give an idea of who they are or who they say they are.
Okay.
And also the bird in the photo, turns out it's a red kite.
Red kite. Okay. All right.
So let's see here. Gorillur is a non-profit making association which defends and divulges Navarra's natural values. Gorillur also works with other Iberian and European associations in order to sort out environmental problems which affect species and spaces all over the world. So first, what is Navarra? Simply put, Navarra is an autonomous community in and it's its own province in northeastern Spain. They have a large natural landscape, which include very windy mountaintops, which could be why they are a target of wind farms.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, how does Gorillur feel about wind energy in general? This is from their .org site. And they have a page regarding wind energy. The implementation of wind power in Navarra is resulting in the biggest ecological disaster in the last few years. I think I can think of some others.
Yeah.
Yeah. Moreover, it is so drastically changing Navarra's landscape that once the projects covering our mountains with wind farms conclude, even its own inhabitants will fail to recognize Navarra. The production of wind power and its benefits have been widely spread by companies involved through Navarra's media. However, these companies didn't mention the extremely serious ecological, cultural, and landscape damages which this implies for Navarra's nature. Now, that is a legitimate concern. And as far as I'm concerned, wind power is a very good thing, but we should definitely consider the impacts and costs regarding where they are built. I read just about their entire English website and a bit of the Spanish language parts, because there's parts of the website that aren't available in English, because I wanted to learn more about their cause. And I found this part very interesting. They have made several proposals regarding wind farms on their land. Quote, stations should be placed in non-mountainous areas, although this implies lower productivity. Adapt the productivity of wind power to the possibilities of the place and not to the electrical industry's interests. So essentially, they're not completely against wind power. They're just against them being built in regions that are very important to them and where wind turbines can cause disruptions to the ecosystem. And I think that's very reasonable.
Yeah, they don't want them mucking up their landscape. I
Yeah,
get that.
yeah. I honestly think that's fully reasonable. Yeah. I completely I'm on their side when it comes to that specific part.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this image of the poor red kite hit by wind turbines was used as an example from Navarra to exemplify the threat to their home that is caused by building these things in their mountainous regions. But it later started being used in the U.S. for political reasons. Of course, essentially, wind energy is seen as a left-wing thing, and by some people who have legitimate concern about the dangers of these wind turbines to their wildlife.
Right.
So, how many avian deaths are caused by wind energy each year? So take a look at this image that I have. It's from the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy at the National University of Singapore. So we got a bar chart here.
I see that. Okay, so let's see. We got wind energy. Is this the very first one? We got wind energy at 19,875.
Yeah, deaths of avian deaths per year. Yeah.
Right. But then there's a big increase here. Like, I like this chart. Okay, so we got nuclear power, we got communications tower, we got fossil fuels, and then we got pesticide poisoning, which is up to 72 million.
Yeah.
And then my favorite here, the feral cats at 110 million. So there's quite an increase there. We started at not even 20,000.
Yeah.
Per year. And then you go up to 110 million for feral cats.
Yeah.
So, I think birds have got bigger problems than wind turbines.
Yeah, it certainly appears that way. For sure. And the thing is that there's always this idea that the industries are creating this biased language and they're making up these statistics and things. But the thing is, this is from Singapore, and a lot of the places that get blamed are also, from China and the U.S. Right. And you'd have to have a worldwide conspiracy in order to all work together to, undermine the avian deaths.
Also, I mean, this is fairly new. Like, wind turbines haven't been around too long. I don't know exactly when they started, but birds will figure it out. They'll evolve. You'll get the better birds. They'll learn to fly around the damn things.
So we are actually going to go over that.
Yeah.
That is something I wanted to look into as well and see what the science says about that.
Also, what about the bugs? How many dead bugs are they scraping off these things? I mean, they're good for the ecosystem too. They got to pollinate shit and everything. How many bugs are on them blades? I get bugs on my ceiling fan blades at home.
Yeah, and this study is from 2009. It's on the avian deaths in the United States per year by all these different sources, which brings me something that I love very much that I have to be critical of.
No,
of course, it's easy for me to be all gung ho to rant about fossil fuels, but I hate saying it. But even if I don't like it, the truth matters. Cats are almost certainly the biggest threat to avian life in the world.
Absolutely. They love birds. Birds are tasty. They're easy to catch when they're stupid and they're on the ground. A cat pounces out of the bushes or whatever, That's a good lunch right there.
I still remember there was a time when I was out on my porch or my balcony when I was living at the apartment complex.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I was out on the balcony with my girlfriend's cat Smokey,
Mm-hmm.
and this robin, comes up and lands on the railing of the porch.
Uh-oh.
Smokey jumps up and grabs this bird,
Oh wow.
and the bird gets, flutters out and gets away from Smokey and gets onto the tree that's like very close to the porch, and it just is I can't think of any better word than bitching. It is bitching. It's like meh, 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 meh. It's so upset that can you believe this fucking animal just grabbed me and whatever. And this other robin comes and lands on the branch next to it, and kind of hops near it, and it looks at the other robin and keeps going meh, 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 and the other robin's like, fuck this, and takes off. Like, this is annoying. Like, I watched a robin get annoyed by another robin, which I've never seen before in my life. But this bird was visibly annoyed by this other robin. But so that being said, cats are a huge threat to avian
absolutely.
life.
Cats are a threat to anything smaller than a cat. Your cat, if you have a cat at home, the only reason it doesn't kill you is because it can't.
Yeah, you're bigger than it.
If you died today and your cat was hungry, it would eat you.
Probably, yeah, probably.
No problem about it.
I fucking love cats.
It would
too,
fucking eat you.
I love cats, but I have to admit that
assholes.
domestic cats being kind of introduced into the ecosystem has been a huge threat to birds.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to read a study from the journal Nature Communications. Quote, we estimate annual mammal mortality in the contiguous United States at about 6.3 and 22.3 billion. The median being 12.3 billion, with 89% of this mortality caused by unowned cats. The estimate I know it's terrible.
They're tasty and they're little and they're easy to grab when they're not paying attention. Go for it. I like chicken, so
The estimate that incorporated European data may be slightly lower because of wildlife across much of Europe were historically exposed to predation by similarly sized wild cats, and therefore may be less naive to predation of domestic cats. However, it is unlikely that European wildlife have fully adapted to the unusually high density of domestic cats in much of the continent. So cats are a threat to birds.
Oh, yeah.
A huge, one of the biggest threats to birds. But we're focusing on wind energy. Let's leave kitties alone. Because I love cats.
110 million compared to 20,000.
I love
whatever.
Yeah, not even 20,000.
That's a minor difference, yeah.
So anyway, we're focusing on wind energy.
Yeah, clearly they're the danger here.
So wind farms do in fact kill birds by direct impact, but not quite as many as nuclear energy and many fewer than what can be directly attributed to fossil fuels.
Sure.
That doesn't mean that wind turbines are not an issue. If birds are being killed on such a mass scale, especially endangered birds being killed, solutions should be figured out. There have been proposed ways to reduce the impact of wind farms on avian populations. For example, it has been suggested that making the wind turbines taller and making the blades shorter could significantly reduce the impact on birds. Now, some avid readers may recall a study a while back that may be tempting to use to defend the use of wind turbines. This is from the Smithsonian, which is referencing a study from the University of Tulsa, which studied avian deaths on roads in Nebraska. This study spans 30 years and studied the impact that roads had on bird populations in those areas by studying the avian population and by collecting dead birds along roadsides, which were most likely killed by passing cars.
That's a depressing job, huh? He's scooping up all the dead birds on the roadside.
Well, eventually, researchers collecting the birds' bodies along the roads found that the number of dead birds found were declining.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Now,
because they learned. They figured it out.
so
They evolved.
this could be inferred that the entire bird populations were declining because of so many birds being hit by cars.
Mm-hmm.
But the researchers found something interesting. Not only were fewer birds dying, but there was something different about the birds themselves.
Okay.
This is a quote from the Smithsonian. Quote, our results indicate that these birds since then have become increasingly less likely to collide with cars and that road mortality is not indiscriminate. One possible explanation is that selection has favored individuals whose wing morphology allows for better escape. Longer wings have lower wing loading and do not allow for as vertical takeoff as shorter, more rounded wings. Thus, individuals sitting on a road, as cliff swallows often do, who are able to fly upward more vertically may be better able to avoid or even more effectively pivot away from an oncoming vehicle.
Okay.
So, it would be tempting to say that birds have shown an ability to adapt to the introduction of human technology and therefore will adapt to wind turbines in a similar way.
Mm-hmm.
But there's two problems with this.
Okay.
One, obviously, in order for the actual biology of an avian population to change, that would mean, according to evolutionary biology, that enough of the population was killed in order for surviving members of the species to not have inherited the dying bird's genes. Not exactly a good thing.
No, but it's survival of the fittest,
Yeah.
The ones who are equipped to survive.
Yeah. And it's not exactly a good thing that the introduction of cars might have killed a significant enough portion of the species for it to change the entire species.
Right. Well, any change that we make is going to affect the surrounding, animals
we're
and,
going to have some environmental impact regardless of what we do, and that's just a fact.
Yeah,
That's just...
and they'll adapt. They're smart. Birds are bugs or whatever. They're like people. We adapt to the changes we need to adapt to, and we survive. Or we don't, and tough shit.
Yeah, and ultimately, if that kind of adaptation does happen, it could be argued that it indicates that a species will ultimately be resilient in the end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But the second problem is, again, from the Smithsonian regarding the same study. These changes in death rates aren't explained by changes in traffic patterns or populations of the birds, researchers say. And they're calling this change in wingspan, quote, vehicular selection, but it may not be the only force at play.
Okay.
New Scientist writes, however, Brown says that encounters with traffic may not be the only force at work. After a particularly cold May in 1996 killed about half of the nesting population through starvation, wing lengths dropped markedly. Perhaps because birds with shorter wings were better able to capture the remaining insects still on their wings. So, an unusually cold winter accelerated this change in wingspan. This is a tertiary factor that muddles the idea that the animals just adapted to our presence solely based on the study.
Mm-hmm.
So if I had to guess based on the findings, I would think that bird populations will adapt to the presence of wind turbines, but I can't say without significant doubts because this information is not conclusive, even when regarding the highway studies. And highways and wind turbines are not a one-to-one comparison.
No.
So even though this study might be tempting to use as a source to defend the use of wind turbines, it may not be the most intellectually sound argument. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not ignoring the fact that more avian deaths are caused by fossil fuel plants than by wind turbines. That does not mean, however, that the deaths caused by wind turbines doesn't matter. So to put this into perspective in a different context. So yes, more birds are killed by fossil fuels than by windmills, but that doesn't mean that windmills killing birds doesn't matter.
Right.
So to put this in perspective, in a completely different context, I had a conversation about Copernic kneeling during the national anthem with an avid Fox News watcher at a past job that I had. Mm. He said, Copernic is kneeling for attention to white on black violence, but black on black crime kills so many more black people. To which my response was, does that make white on black violence not a problem? Imagine how stupid I would sound if I walked into a research lab trying to cure AIDS and I accused them of being wrong because cancer kills more people. You know, like it's a stupid argument, you know.
Yeah.
So there's not really like you can't say that the deaths don't matter,
Right.
just because there's a bigger source of death, you
Right.
know. Ignoring the impact of wind turbines would be a similar thing, except for the fact that cancer and AIDS, the flu, medical malpractice, those are mutually exclusive. Wind turbines, however, can potentially replace fossil fuels.
Mm-hmm.
And if wind turbines can have a smaller impact, that would save more birds. Now, I can already hear the arguments, quote, well, if fossil fuels kill more birds than wind turbines right now, that's just because fossil fuels are more common. Once wind farms become more common, the number of wind energy related deaths will rival or even exceed the impact of fossil fuels. Two things right off the bat that are wrong with that argument. One, the study showing the estimated impact of fossil fuels on avian life was not comprehensive. There are harvesting practices that get the fuels in the first place that impact climate change and will almost certainly extend the impacts on avian life significantly. Two, if you argue about the ratio, well, we can put it this way. This is from the same study from the National University of Singapore. Quote, through a synthesis of hundreds of studies on avian mortality and energy and electricity production, the study finds that wind farms and nuclear power stations are responsible each for between 0.3 and 0.4 fatalities per gigawatt hour of electricity, while fossil fuel power stations are responsible for about 5.2 per gigawatt. So,
Okay.
per gigawatt hour, wind turbines are responsible for much fewer deaths of avian life. So, wind turbines, even when taking the ratio of wind farms versus fuel plants into account, are still a safer option.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Does that mean that we shouldn't consider the impact of wind turbines on the environment? Obviously, no. But the evidence shows benefits for switching to wind energy. And if we make the right changes and make considerations of how and where the wind farms are built, we can reduce the damage that we cause even further. So I'm going to call that part one.
Okay. All right.
I honestly, I didn't want to do multi-part episodes, but this one, there's so much.
There's a lot to cover.
There's so much to cover here.
Yeah.
And we're not even halfway through.
Oh my gosh.
There's a lot
Three-parter?
here. Yeah. So far, what do you think about wind energy and the impact on birds compared to say fossil fuels or something like that?
Well, I think it's unfortunate that they're killing off so many birds, but it's because it's a new thing. You know, birds don't really understand what it is. I don't know how quickly birds learn this kind of stuff, but I mean, it's a new thing. Birds are going to keep flying the way they've been flying, and they're going to occasionally get hit by a windmill.
Yeah,
You know, it happens.
Yeah,
and eventually they'll figure it out. You know, if nothing else, survival of the fittest. That'll kick in. You know, and they'll learn to fly around them.
yeah,
You know, and it's only 20,000 a year. I mean, when you think about how many birds are on this planet, that's not a lot of birds.
right. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's 8 billion people on this planet,
and there's more birds.
Yeah, and there's an insane amount of birds compared to that.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not worried about it. It's unfortunate. I don't ever want to see an animal die. I like animals.
Yeah,
I think they're pretty cool. I like to watch them. I have, squirrels I feed in my backyard, and I love the little guys, and if one of them died, I'd be very upset.
Yeah.
But things die. People
Right,
die,
yeah.
animals die, birds, unfortunately, are going to die.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't think it's really that big a deal. I may sound like an asshole for saying that, but
Yeah,
it's only
and
20,000 a year. That's not a lot of birds.
Right.
They'll
yeah.
figure it
and,
out.
And in part two, we're gonna get into some of the numbers that like some of the, we're gonna compare some numbers that kind of bring to light the impact of wind energy compared to some other things that humans do. And then, obviously we already went over cats, which is cats have been studied to be the biggest threat to avian life, essentially.
Yeah,
so
definitely. There are a lot of bigger threats to birds on this planet than wind turbines.
Yeah, and especially like climate change, for example.
Yeah.
Which is part of why
we found way more efficient ways to kill birds than wind turbines.
Yeah, and that's and the thing is, like, climate change is part of why windmills are being built, is to avoid it, and climate change is having a huge impact on birds.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we're in the long run, we're trying to fix it. We're trying to make it better for birds, humans, whatever, anything living on this planet. Because we, as a human race, are fucking this planet up. We are making a huge mess.
There's no doubt about that.
There's absolutely no doubt.
There's doubt from certain people, but scientifically, there's no doubt.
We have plans to move to Mars. We are fucking this planet up so bad.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I think the birds will be okay in the long run. It's going to be a little rough for them at the beginning.
Yeah.
But in the long run, I think they'll be okay. We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. It'll be okay.
I think so too. And we're not done yet. But
oh god, no. We're gonna kill way more birds in the future.
I mean for this podcast. I know. So part two, we're gonna get into some things. But thank you all so much for listening to part one. Please stick around for part two. I'm gonna try to keep these multi-part episodes to a minimum. I like to have something brand new to talk about for each episode. But thank you all so much for listening. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
It's been a while since I wrote this script, and it's also it's 42 pages long. So
that's too many pages.
Yeah, but there's a lot to go over on this one.
I get that, but that's a lot of pages.